Good evening, everyone. This is Dexter B. Jenkins. Welcome to Let's Talk Real Estate. Yay! We are live in the studio at New England Christian Television Network, 247 North Main Street in Randolph, Mass. We get together once a month to talk about real estate and to talk about really specifically how do we use real estate as a wealth creation tool. And so before we want to get started, we want to obviously thank New England Christian Television Network for allowing us to do this. They allow us to come here for free. Y'all know what free is, right? Don't cost any money. And so we thank God for them. And what I like to do is always be a blessing to them. And so if they'll put up on their screen a QR code, if you want to give into the network and make a donation to that, we encourage you to do that. That's our way of saying thank you for them doing something nice for us, right? My mother taught me years ago, when somebody does something nice for you, you say what? Thank you. And so we say thank you to New England Christian Television Network and its highly esteemed leader, Eddie Jules. And so they'll put up a QR code at some point during this show. And so you can make sure that you can donate and give into the network. Because as you guys know, it costs money to run everything, including a network. And we want to see it grow and flourish and do all that God has called for it to do. So that's the commercial out of the way. We have an exciting guest with us today. I have been stalking this young woman via LinkedIn, and she's become highly referred by a couple people that we know, who actually our last month guest, Jose Velney, was here, and so he highly recommends her. And then another mentor friend of ours, Daniel Collins, she did some work for him, and so we're in for a treat tonight. She is an attorney, but she's also spent some time on the real estate side as an agent, and so she'll talk a little bit about that. So what I'd like to do is I want you guys to give a nice round of applause for Jetta Derizier.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you for coming and hanging out with us.
Absolutely, anytime.
Yeah.
I'm really excited to be here with all of you and everyone at home and everyone that's watching. So thank you for having me.
Yeah. Well, tell us a little bit about yourself. I don't like to do introductions because you know you better not.
Absolutely.
And so people introduce themselves.
So my first name is Morgietta, but everyone calls me Jetta, like the car. Last name is Derizier. It's French. My parents are from Haiti,
right.
So that's where my roots come from. And I am an attorney. I also have a broker's license, which is, as you know, just a small distinction from the salesperson's license. And I also have my real estate instructor's license. So for, I want to say about 2.5 years, I taught pre-licensing at Roxbury Community College. Wow. For anyone that wanted to get their license, right. I was there for about 2.5 years. Right. And currently, I co-own Bay State Law Group with my business partner. We focus primarily on real estate transactions, commercial, residential, as well as real estate litigation, landlord-tenant. Right. She occasionally will do more divorce and things of that nature, but we try to be real estate centered and focused, and litigation focused. Right. So we're busy.
You are very busy, very busy. I didn't know that you were the co-owner of that.
Yes, I am. Thank you. Thank you.
So you a boss too?
Just a little bit.
Amen.
The paychecks don't always feel that way, but
well, you're looking to grow that, right? You're looking to grow this. Oh, wow. Well, tell us about how you got started. You talked a little bit about, teaching classes and being a broker.
Yes.
You guys may or may not know, when you're an attorney, you're automatically a broker in this Commonwealth of Massachusetts.
Yes.
And so you didn't know that? Now you know. And so if you want to be a broker, you can go be an attorney.
Yeah, go to law school, pass the bar exam.
Pass the bar, and you're a broker. But tell us, how do you get started? I mean, where'd you get your passion for real estate? So talk a little bit about that.
So interestingly enough, I actually started real estate on the commercial side.
Okay.
I was an assistant for a large commercial company in the Seaport, and from that point, I kind of just grew my passion, just understanding what real estate was. I think the hard part is growing up, especially in urban cities, they don't really explain what real estate means. What does it mean to have a career in real estate?
Right.
I had no idea. I honestly just applied for the job on Craigslist to be an assistant. But my boss at the time was just amazing and just kind of explained what real estate was, getting into it, the wealth knowledge, and how do you build on that, and how people make all this money. And I was like, oh, I had no idea this existed. And so at the time, I was in college at Suffolk University, and he encouraged me to get my license. So got my leasing license, my salesperson's license, and worked for a leasing company. And I did real estate sales on the leasing side, rental side, when it was really big. So I want to say over 10 years ago, before the colleges had all those on campus dorms, everybody needed an apartment. Exactly. So it was a great time to get in. I learned a lot. But at some point, I knew I wanted to go to law school. So I actually tell people I used real estate as a tool to kind of help me pay for law school, because I had the flexibility of my own schedule. So I would only work, certain months out of the year, and then I would go to law school at night to kind of make that balance work. And then once I passed the bar, I knew that I could continue that role as a broker. So I did that, and I applied for my teaching license to do real estate because I was just really very passionate about it. And I got that license as well shortly after passing the bar. So it's been a long journey, but a good journey.
Yeah, exactly.
And
it seems like it makes you well-rounded.
Very well-rounded, yes.
Because you can speak to a lot of the issues that people deal with so both sides, as both a broker, as an owner, as a business person, and real estate yourself, and then someone who's helped people find apartments and houses.
Yeah,
and things
absolutely,
of that
yeah.
nature.
And I like to preach that, it's not to say that, I just want to put all this information about myself out there, but I do believe in educating people. Right. I think that's the causal connection to anything, especially in real estate. There's not, you can YouTube as much as you want, but you need that hands-on experience and hands-on information from someone that can see both sides of, whatever situation you're in.
Right.
So.
Yeah. I mean, that's the critical part. I mean, that's why we started this group, was really to begin to educate folks, particularly people who look like us.
Right. Absolutely.
To your point of, you said your boss was opened a whole new world for you of things that you were like,
Absolutely.
I never knew this existed.
Absolutely.
And so you think about the amount of people who look like you and I, who have no clue as to the wealth that's been built. You think about what's going on in our city. You see real estate going up, building all over the place.
Absolutely.
And so wealth is being built around us, and we have no clue what's going on. And so, you can be in the promised land, not even know you're there.
That's right.
Boy, I ain't trying to preach tonight, but boy, that deserves an amen. I'm just saying amen on that one. That's an amen on that one.
Amen.
We ain't in church, but that was good.
Amen. Amen.
But yeah, we can be in the promised land and even not know it. And so, part of my passion, and the reason why I'm linking up with people like yourself who are also passionate about is, how can we get more people who look like you and I creating wealth through real estate?
Right,
absolutely. And so where it's you're talking about your family offline, so that your children can inherit blocks.
Yes.
And buildings and things that nature, and have a leg up on life.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So that's the goal.
That is the goal. Yeah. And I'm hoping that in many years forward, this platform and other platforms will be full and rambunctious, and people will just have that information at their fingertips. Like you said, there are so many changes happening all across the greater city of Boston and surrounding towns, and I really think that a lot of people, are just scared. Obviously, that's number one. The fear is a big
It's
thing.
real. It's real.
But fear is just a lack of information, right? Because if you know something, you won't be as afraid to approach it or try to understand it. And I think that if we can disseminate that fear just by putting simple things in place, resources in place, it'll help with this gap that currently exists, right? I was talking to a really good colleague of mine about, there's changes everywhere in the city, but for me, the newest change is obviously Mattapan, right? So Mattapan is doing a whole new infrastructure and change, and part of the reason why I believe it's going so slow is because that's a community of it's a big community of immigrants. There are a lot of immigrants that live there, but they are they live with their parents, right? And so there's this idea to pass that property down and not just move out and sell it and things of that nature. So it's going to be a slow process, but I feel like that community is somewhat gotten some of that education. I mean, you still see the buildings going up, right? But it's all about understanding, why are we not selling grandma's house? Why are we keeping this in the family? And doing what's right when the time is right,
course,
right? But it's about that education.
Yeah, and I think you said something. There's a actually, I don't know if you mentioned it, but there's a nationwide group that has their sort of their tagline, don't sell grandma's house.
Yeah.
And you look at a lot of times, because we don't understand the dynamics of the power of real estate.
Right.
I grew up in a family where my dad was a business owner, a real estate owner, and my dad is 78 now, so I'm always talking to him about the power because he doesn't realize what he has done. And part of what this group is all about is many of us bought properties when we were young and had no clue. They just taught us to buy a house and we bought it.
Right.
And I'm like, so what if we can do? What if we can buy these properties but know what we're doing with it and leverage it so that we're able to do other things and truly be able to do some things that we're talking about.
Absolutely. And I think the leveraging piece is creating that seat at the table, right? Because there are lots of tables out there, and these conversations will happen whether you have a seat at the table or not. Yeah. And it's really about trying to figure out how you can either get your seat at that table or make your own table.
That's what I'm talking about.
So, starts with the education. It starts with that, disseminating that fear and understanding that it's chess, not checkers, and making sure that you understand that you need certain items in certain places at certain times to make certain moves. So, I'm very passionate about that kind of part of the work, and I hope that it continues to grow and people get to learn. Yeah.
Well, to talk about let's talk about you as an attorney a little bit. What should we be looking for when we come to someone such as yourself?
I have all different types of people that come to me for different reasons. I think in the real estate is such a vast topic anyways, so we get everyone from the first-time home buyers who are new and they have all this down payment assistance and other resources, all the way up to the investors who some of them are thinking, some of them just want to know how to strategize better. I think the number one thing that I always try to tell people is come with questions. If you come with me, don't come with questions. I will educate you, but you have to start that thinking process on your own. And there are in this what they call YouTube University world, there are a lot of things that you can
between Google and YouTube. Yeah, exactly.
Do some groundwork on your own to kind of figure out where you want to start in this process, because there's so many places to start in real estate. I mean, it's endless, and I think there's still this glamour about what real estate is, but no one wants to talk about what real estate is, right? They just talk about the glamour and the lifestyle and things of that nature. So if you want to go meet with an attorney, come with questions. may or may not have all the answers, but it needs to be a dialogue. And I think that's the most important thing, is making it a dialogue. How do I get into real estate? Do I want to become an agent? Do I want to do commercial? What is commercial? You know, there's different things that people can kind of gather up so that it could be a fluid conversation.
And the thing that you said is so critical. I was talking to somebody the other day. I said, that's sometimes that's the confusing part, because there are so many different ways you can buy and hold, you can fix and flip, you can wholesale, you can be an agent, you can be commercial. And I think it's almost like going to a restaurant where the menu's too big. It's like, you know, one of the restaurants we go to, my wife and I go to periodically, is a Cheesecake Factory.
They have a big menu.
Oh, they got a huge menu. You just like, give me a second, come back.
Exactly.
You know, but you go to the restaurant, they got 5 things. Well, it's pretty easy to find out what you need because they only got 5 things. And I think real estate is very much like that.
Absolutely.
And that there are so many different ways you can get involved in it. And so I think being able to focus on one until you master that part of it is what I would suggest. And then you may find out that you get involved in one part of it and you don't like it and say, I don't want to do that.
Yeah.
And then I'm over here. And so part of this exploration process, for those of you out there watching us on TV, and that's why we're doing is to give you different flavors of, you know, how you can get involved.
Right.
You may not want to be an attorney, but, you know, Jetta also talked about being an agent and different things on the leasing side and the commercial side, you know. So part of what we want to do is be able to sort of whet your appetite a little bit and sort of point you in a direction so you can see what you like and what you don't like.
Absolutely. And don't chase the money. Right. Everybody wants to get in real estate for the money, and it's very lucrative. Don't get me wrong, but if you focus on the money, it will drive you the wrong direction. I think it's important to, as you said, pick something or pick a couple of different things that you want to educate yourself on or get more information about and see what you like. And if you do that one particular thing very well, the money will come. You know, you don't have to, you know, do all the chasing. It will find you.
Well, but money is drawn to excellence.
Right. Absolutely.
Have mercy.
Absolutely.
It is money. Money is, you know, anybody who has done well, whether it's, you know, what you do or, you know, most times we can relate to athletes.
Right.
You know, they're doing it because they have a passion for it.
Exactly.
And it's their purpose.
Exactly.
You know, and sometimes you trip over your purpose, which just sounds like you did. You just like, oh, I didn't know I was on Craigslist.
Exactly.
I needed a job.
I needed a job, and it fell into my lap, so to speak.
Then, you know, here you are, umpteen years later, you know, still doing that.
Yeah, absolutely.
So one thing they should do is come to you with questions. What else should they be looking for?
I think in general, I always tell people you have to make time to read.
Okay.
I think reading, you know, hate to be cliche, but reading is fundamental. It's a necessary part of life.
Right.
They have ebooks now, Kindle books, things of that nature. And I think that, you know, we have to get into this practice of educating ourselves in different formats. But, you know, that black and white print never gets old. Yeah. And so I usually tell people, you know, don't try to, you know, I think they said that most millionaires read like 30 books a year. Like, you don't have to be all that, right? Just, you know, do one book every other month or something. You know, give yourself a nice, pace. Reasonable goal. The great thing about real estate is the wheel's not reinventing itself. No. It's the same wheel. It is. It's the same wheel with different principles and different people pushing the wheel. But for all intents and purposes, it's the same wheel, right? And so all of the nuances and greatness and things that you need to learn have already been done. The mistakes have already been made, right? So if you want to learn what those things are, you got to dive in and read, right? And then obviously surround yourself with people who are in real estate, who want to be in real estate, who want to understand real estate, right? Another cliche, your network is your net worth, right? So you have to be in with the people, right? And understanding that. And so if you submerge yourself, educate yourself, you know, and be open to trying different things, you'll have a great footing in the door. Right.
And I think, you know, we talk about one of our favorite proverbs is Proverbs 13 and 20. So I read it this morning. It said, he who walks with the wise becomes
Absolutely.
wise.
Absolutely.
But a companion of fools suffers harm.
Absolutely.
So you got two people. You got a wise person and a fool, and based off of, and basically it was because of who they associated with.
Right.
And so, meetings like this and other meetings that you will go to like this, where people are talking about wealth building and creation, real estate, and doing better for themselves. It begins to rub off on you.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's kind of like when you buy that car, and then everywhere you go, you see that
it.
same car.
There it is.
Did everybody have this car before I bought this car?
It existed prior to buying it.
Absolutely.
But your eyes are open to.
Absolutely.
And one of my first mentors used to say, he didn't say it to me personally, but I heard him say it to me. He was like, success is a language. And he said, for most people, it's a foreign language. And I was like, whoa. And so you try to get in rooms like where people are talking about success. And then I think, one of the mistakes, I don't want to take up all the time, it could be out of open the floor and all that type of stuff. People don't take enough time to get in those rooms, for whatever reason.
Yeah. And I think, the other thing is, don't be afraid to ask. There are so many people who are willing to
Big time.
share their experiences for free.
Right.
Just
Like
sharing their
this
time.
is free. Yeah, it's free.
And
we're not paying you out. We're not paying you, right?
Not yet. No.
Jenna not getting a check off this one. She may get a check out of it. We ain't paying her for this. And she has a 4-year and a 2-year, so she's dedicating her time for us. So she's away from her mommy time to be with us.
But that's what it's all
So we
about,
appreciate
right?
that,
Just there are people who are willing to share their time,
True.
talents, treasures, for the growth of the community,
Right,
right?
right.
And it's really important to make sure that you, again, surround yourself, but build yourself a team.
Right.
The resources are out there. Again, a lot of times free, sometimes at a minimal cost, but again, you can't put a price on certain pieces of information, certain education that you receive. So it's out there.
Right.
It's out there. You just got to go get it.
Want to go get it.
Yeah, you got to want to go get it.
So switching hats a little bit, not switching hats, but this is one of the main reasons why I brought you here, because one of the biggest, I would say, complaints or fears that people have is, I don't want to be a landlord.
Yeah.
Matter of fact, I heard ooh in the audience. They were like, ooh, because they've heard of my cousin, my auntie, whatever else. And I'm like, yeah, there are. Now, my wife and I have been landlords for years. We own property now, and so, we're used to it. And have there been some negatives? Yeah, but I will say this, but the positive far outweigh the negatives. And so talk to us about that process, what you see, how someone can navigate that process from your perspective.
So I think the most important thing about being a landlord is remembering that it's a business, right?
Oh, Lord have mercy. Did she
You-
say that?
you-
What did she say, class? It's a business.
Okay.
TV, audience, what is it? It's a business.
Okay?
All right.
You are creating a business for yourself.
Hold on a second. We can just cut the show out right now, because she gave y'all what y'all need. This is a business.
It's a business,
All right, go ahead.
and that's the, unfortunately, the number one thing that I think people forget. They get into this forgetting that you're creating an entity.
Right.
And you're creating this business, and this business is going to come with challenges like any business.
Yeah, it's good.
And you need to prepare yourself like you would any business.
Right.
And if you don't know how to do that, educate yourself. A lot of people can't go to business school, but they have all these classes online. Again,
Community
YouTube,
colleges,
community
yeah, all
colleges.
that.
Take a business course. That'll help you understand managing emotions, which is huge, being a landlord. Managing finances. The water heater is going to break at some point.
It's not going to last forever.
It's not going to last forever.
It's
It's going to break.
break.
You're going to get an unruly tenant, but there are mechanisms in place to assist you in preparing for that.
Right.
And just like any business that you would get into, you have to educate yourself
Right.
in understanding what is it going to take to run this business that I'm going to enter into.
Got it.
Part of that means building a team.
Right.
There are a lot of
You
people.
said build a team like 3 times. I'm
I-
stopping it because I want you guys to hear this. Because you cannot do this by
You
yourself.
cannot.
And
You
she said
cannot.
build a team at least 3 times.
You cannot do this by yourself. And I think, again, it goes to the glamour of real estate and the functionality of our society, you know, you don't have to be a superhero every day, right? It's okay to ask for help.
Exactly.
It's okay to be in a position where you may think you're being vulnerable, but you're not. You're actually setting yourself for
success.
something better, for success, right? And so the biggest issue that I see with a lot of landlords is they don't have that team put together. You know, they see that 3.5% down, first time home buyer, get the two families so it pays for itself, and that's it. That's where the education stops, right? But no one dives deeper into what that actually means. And so
and actually, that's when your education starts.
And that's where the education starts.
When you get the property is when the education starts.
Absolutely. And you'll either learn the easy way or the hard way.
Right.
And, you know, there are ways to learn very easy and there are ways to learn very hard. And so you just have to pick which avenue you want to go to.
Right.
Again, resources available. And I think that there's a stigma with Massachusetts being what they call a quote-unquote tenant-friendly state. Are there a lot more resources available for tenants than landlords? Yes, I will just say that. That's just my professional opinion. But that doesn't mean there aren't resources available for landlords. You know, they do exist. And I think, you know, the idea is that you have to put yourself in that position to need those resources. And if you don't, again, you'll just learn the hard way. But keeping that separation between yourself and your business is key. You know, I wouldn't say every, but a lot of landlords that we represent, and we, you know, unfortunately have to start eviction processes or go to court, I always get the sob story from the landlord. Oh, I fell for it again, or I fell for this or something. And I explain to them that, you know, don't beat yourself up, right? You didn't fall for anything. You know, just unfortunately made a bad business decision. How can we fix this next time around so that this decision isn't made again? What mechanisms can we put in place so that you feel comfortable not arriving in this position again? And so, but that's having a business hat on and looking at it from that lens, you know. So I would say that's definitely my number one go-to thing to remember. It's a business.
And it seems like, I mean, the times that we've gotten into trouble is when we didn't treat it like a business. And when we didn't sit down and set clear understandings of what, this is what I'm going to do, this is what I'm expecting from you, yada, yada, yada. And so, and I would say anytime there's gray, there's going to be a problem.
Absolutely. And I think not only gray, but routine, right? There should be some sort of set rubric, right? Are you going to do quarterly inspections, monthly inspections? How often are you going to communicate with them? Do you communicate with them? Do you have a system to collect your rent? Do you have a system when the rent's not collected? You know, you have to have these mechanisms in place, not when you need them, but before you need them, right? Because you have to prepare for that situation. And again, that just goes back down to the education piece about running a business. You know? Absolutely.
Got it. Yeah, but that's huge. I'm thinking about the times we've done things and gotten into issues or have heard other people, and you begin to ask questions and probe, like, you know, did you have a lease? You know, and systems of, you know, how are you going to collect rent, all those different things. And then not money set aside for, okay, if the water heater is going to break, is there money set aside for that or whatever? You know, different ways that you'll communicate if you need something fixed. You know, all that's part of, you know, that's what I say, the nugget you drop with it's a business up front is so critical. So y'all out there in TV land, understand that it's a business, and you got to begin to think about that, even though it is a place. Because this is just my always taking, and we'll open the floor for you guys. And then when y'all go off TV, we'll have some more questions. So that's why you need to be in the audience. But anyway, you know, that was one of the biggest things I think people make, is that they only look at their house as a place to live. And I'm like, you've got to look at it as a wealth creation tool as well.
Yes.
Because if you're able to do that, obviously you get the benefits of living in it.
Right.
But then there's so many other benefits that can come off it if you're thinking right, if you're strategic and things of that nature. And so part of why we do what we do is because we want people to obviously have a place to stay, But I want you to be thinking strategically about how can we use this house as a way for us to build wealth so that we really can create financial freedom, because that's what you really want.
Exactly.
You know, however you define it's up to you.
Right.
But you know, how can we use the properties that we may lease, wholesale, fix and flip, whatever, to be able to create wealth.
And I think that's the really important part, because I don't think anybody grows up and says, I want to be a landlord. Like that's my occupation. I've decided that's what I want to do in life. I think, as you said, it's a wealth.
Exactly. You go to a third grade.
What do you want to be?
I want to be a landlord.
Exactly. I don't think that's what the direct intention is, right?
Exactly.
And so what is your plan? Because I'm sure you didn't want to be a landlord, but you're using this as a chess tool to create that wealth and bring you to the next step. So how long are you going to be here? Did you give yourself a rubric, a time frame?
Gotcha.
Because not everybody's cut out to be a landlord,
exactly,
right? Or not, I should say, not everyone is cut out to run a business being a landlord, right? And so you have to
and that's okay.
And that's okay.
And that's okay.
And that's going back to the whole idea about the glamour of real estate. That's not the only way to make money in real estate. There are so many other different ways to make money in real estate if that's what your ultimate goal is, to use real estate as a wealth building tool. You don't have to use that route just because your cousin did or someone else in your family did. That may have worked for them. It may not work for you. You know, there's so many different things happening now that you can use as a wealth tool and get into real estate, and you don't have to be a landlord or get into that business.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, and that's why when we first started this episode, what we want to do is introduce people to a lot of different ways of being able to monetize this thing called real estate.
Absolutely.
So it may be an agent, it may be a broker, it may be a wholesale, because there's many different ways, and it really depends on your personality, your exit strategy. So going back to what you've been saying the whole time, having a business mindset, and most people who run businesses, whether they're big or small, they either look to keep them long term or they looking to sell.
Absolutely.
To get the cash and go do something else.
Absolutely.
And so I think the more that we can educate people on that type of thinking.
Yeah. Well, I think that's the problem. People don't think. A lot of people don't think that far ahead. They do it one step at a time, and you really have to have that 5-year, 10-year goal / plan, because you don't want to get into year 3 of running this business and realize not only is it not for you, but you're in the hole and you don't know how to get out because you didn't have that exit strategy in place. You could have sold in year 2, but you didn't. Because you just got stuck.
Yeah. I mean, good. We can go on all day. Let me open the floor, because you said a whole bunch of things. I would love to go a little further on. All right. Any questions in the audience or any questions? I think we may have something on the screen where people can email in or write. I don't know. They sure can't write in, but they can email in or call in to answer any questions. But let's take any questions from you guys. Based off anything we've talked about, anything Jetta has said, anything I've said. Any questions? And my wife has the microphone to give to you guys who may need it.
Hi. Thank you for your time. I appreciate it.
Absolutely.
We recently purchased a 2-family, and we did get that under an LLC. Should we put our home we live in under an LLC? It's a 1-family?
No.
No.
So the purpose of creating an LLC is creating some sort of tool to prevent liability, right? And so the home that you live in, your primary residence, there are other mechanisms that you can do, putting it in a trust or things of that nature that will create that same kind of protection, depending on what you're trying to protect. Whereas the LLC is creating a shield of liability so that, for example, if the unforeseen happens and one of the tenants get injured, they would have recourse against the LLC and not you directly, right? I would recommend that you do put your primary residence, if that's what your choice is, into a trust, and you can still live there, you can still maintain it, but it's again creating another entity that has ownership of this property. So a lot of times people put homes in trusts to avoid, creditors. There's a creditor shell trust. Once you get later in life, there's shells against like mass health or things like that that you can kind of avoid by having your home in a trust. But the LLC wouldn't be the most appropriate. Number one, the trust you pay once it's set up. To the LLC, you pay that fee every year. And so, again, it's a business decision, right? So if it's nothing, unless you're going to be renting out this single family home, I would pretty much put it in the trust versus putting it in the LLC and save the $500 for something else.
Now, what is the cost of the trust? Now, is it dependent on what you do?
It depends on what you want to do.
Okay.
Trusts, just by nature, are contracts, right? And so it's a contract between yourself and a third person that you choose to administer and kind of oversee this trust. So it just depends on exactly what you want to do. Most attorneys that prepare trusts don't just prepare the trust, they do a whole estate plan. And so that would encompass maybe a trust, maybe a will and a trust. Things like healthcare proxies, healthcare derivatives, to kind of protect all of the assets of that individual, not just that home. But I would just say, in my experience, it could be anywhere from $2,000 to $3,000, could go up, right? But it's a one-time fee you pay. It's not like other entities like an LLC that you pay every year. But once it's set up, and you know that you're fully protected.
Now, is that something you guys do?
We do, absolutely, yeah. And so almost every closing, we advise our clients that at some point in the future, just to kind of think about what they want to do. How do you want to protect this asset? Especially in the city of Boston, almost any property you get is close to $500,000, right? And so you don't want to put all this time, effort, and energy into this property just to have it subject to something happening, and then you're not you're not fully protected. So figure out ways to protect it, and that's a wealth tool, right? This is not
so in other words, what you're saying is, if I pay, not that you pay it, because that's $500,000 over here versus $2,000,
right?
Because the challenge people get, I don't want to put that money out. Like, well, you got an asset that potentially an asset that can pay you $500,000, $1 million,
absolutely,
and you're paying 2 or 3 to protect it. Is it worth it?
Yeah, absolutely. It's like car insurance. You pay it, right? You hope you never need it. But it's there if you do.
Just in case you do.
And the small fee that you're paying to protect it is vastly different than the litigation costs if you ever reach that point. So you just gotta make sure it's protected.
What's the commercial? You pay me now, pay me later.
Yes.
Forgot what company that was. Help me, y'all. What company was that? Y'all remember what that was?
I don't remember that. Yeah.
Come on now, I need y'all to help a brother out. but they had, you can either pay me now. I think it was Meineke or something. You either pay me now. It definitely was a car commercial. Pay me now, pay me later. So I think sometimes, we get cheap in our thinking, not recognizing the power of what we have and how we definitely need to protect it.
That's the wealth tool building that you were talking about earlier, and having that business mindset, because once you are fully immersed, those what they call ancillary and expenses, those are mandatory in your book. But once you're first getting started, you don't really see the value in that. And sometimes people again learn the hard way, right? But hopefully not you all. You all out there. So if you prepare and plan ahead, that's what it's really about. You see the value in that protection. Absolutely.
Yeah, that's good. Any other questions out there? I know Angela got another one because mine is running. No, you good? Okay.
This is not a question, but I just want to learn. Excuse me. This is not a question, but I just want to say that I have truly enjoyed the session tonight. And as I was sitting here thinking, listening to you talk, I have a cousin who manages her mother's house, and I've heard some things that you've said tonight about a lease. So when I go home, I'm going to check with her to see, like when you write the lease up, you put certain things in there, because she was telling me that the lady has a little girl and she wanted to know if she could paint the room, and she said no. So I want to be sure that that she did do a lease. And you was talking about inspection, how often. I'm going to find out from her how often she will, because she said she was going to have go and inspect the place to make sure that they haven't torn it up, but also to to make sure that you have these things in the lease, and that God forbid that if something happened, like you were saying, water heater breaks, make sure that she's got the money to take care of that. Also, I had not seen it as a business, landlords being it's a business, but these are some of the things that got me to thinking. So I'm going to ask her these questions, because she is the overseer, like of her mother's property. But this has been rich. This has really been rich.
Yeah, I do think, to your point of Della, the mic, whoever it is, just looking at it as a business. So if you think about it as a business, there are certain things. Insurance is just part
pop
of being
into
a
place.
business.
Just things just fall into place.
Yeah, exactly.
Just makes sense. And just going back to the lease that she was talking about, just kind of boiling everything down to the basics. A lease is a contract. Okay, that's what it is. It's a contract between you and the occupant. That's it. Okay, and
what are some basic things that we should have in a lease? Not every lease is different, I know, but what are some basics?
Lease.
I mean,
the funny thing is, at this point, the lease that we create for our landlords is 15 pages. Because we've
how many pages you said?
15 pages, but we also have we have a formal meeting with the tenant.
Really?
Before they sign, because we understand that it's very comprehensive.
So I mean, like 15 after 14?
Yes, 15 after 14. It varies, right? We have some landlords that we work with that obviously we scale it down just depending on the situation. But we're at 15 right now, and that just kind of encompasses a lot of different things. Also, where did they buy the property? How many units? Like, what is the situation that we're looking at? But to answer your question, it has to have the basics that you're comfortable with, right? Okay. Obviously, you're gonna have, no pets if you don't want it, clean if you want it clean, But sometimes we have these other things like noise, right? Maybe you live there, right? And you want to have, a noise restriction, right? We had one landlord with the experience on now we put no water beds in every lease that landlord has, right? Just different things. I know it's crazy. You can just imagine what happened there. So
exactly.
And it just really comes down to a conversation with the landlord about how often are you going to be there? Are you going to allow them to paint? Do you want them to make modifications? Do you want to know if they're going to make modifications? Right. So it really comes down to that conversation. But at the end of the day, it's a contract. And do you feel comfortable with this contract, signing this contract, having the occupant sign this contract? And what do you want to accomplish? A lot of times people say, I want a year lease. Well, why do you want a year lease, right? Maybe you only want a 6-month lease. There's no rule that says you have to have a 1-year lease. Okay. You can have a month-to-month tenant be in a lease, right? And
really?
so
I didn't know that.
Absolutely, it's a contract, right? So you guide this, right? And so you can come up with the terms and what those terms look like. Right. And I think at the end of the day, people kind of fall into this boilerplate. I have to do what so and so did, and not kind of think with that business mindset, right? But if you kind of walk through some of these situations, you can realize that you have a lot more control than you think you do,
Okay.
right? And it's your ship, you're guiding it,
Right.
and you can take experiences from here and take experience from there and kind of mesh it to what you think fits your situation.
Right.
Some landlords don't want to be at the property every month. They
Right.
they don't want to be that type of person. Then sometimes we'll have that conversation about hiring a property manager. Maybe you don't want to be the person knocking on the door or doing these inspections. So then we will advise you to do this, right? And so it's all about having that open dialogue and understanding what your role is in this business.
Right. Yeah, I never thought about a month-to-month lease being a contract.
Absolutely.
Yeah. It does make sense now that you explain it, but I just had never thought
Can
of it.
renew every 30 days.
Yeah, exactly.
You
Yeah,
can have
exactly. Yeah,
terms
just-
in there.
Yeah,
and
exactly. Just never thought of it in that. Because to your point, you mostly think boilerplate 1 year.
Yeah, well,
we'll go
that's
back
it.
to 12 months.
Yeah, see you in
know.
12 months.
Yeah,
But
exactly.
maybe
yeah.
you just want to test out the water, see how it goes, see if it works out.
Because it is, and I mean, it is a business, but in many respects, it's also a marriage.
It is. Absolutely.
And so, and
Absolutely.
everybody, I think what we've found when we've talked to people who've made mistakes is that they didn't do, even though I said I was joking with 15 being a lot of pages, it takes what it takes.
It is.
I mean, for
It
you to be
is.
very thorough and have discussions and talk to people, looking at, bank statements and pay stubs and all that. And I'm like, well, did you look at that? No, we didn't look at that. I'm like, well, why didn't this? Because they told you they made that money. Did you really believe that that's what they made? Without, trust and verify.
That's right. Trust and verify.
And so just being able to, and you learn, from sometimes things not going so well, or you hear other people say, oh, I can add that to my lease. But I do think the more thorough you can be, listen, y'all, the more thorough you can be up front, the less headaches you're going to have. Not saying you won't have any, but I just think the clearer you can be, it just helps you.
Absolutely.
Yeah, specifics
down
are very important.
specifics, Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah. So talk about the, God forbid, if we have to go the eviction process. Talk to us about that a little bit.
Okay. So the eviction process is a process. Let's just put that out there. It's sometimes can be daunting, but you have to have patience with it, especially in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. But we can kind of just break down the process. So before you move even in that direction, what is it that you want to evict them for, right? You have to figure out what's your basis. As a landlord in Massachusetts, you can evict for no reason, as long as they're not in a lease, right? And they're a tenant at will and you just want to reclaim your property. You could have no reason, you just want your property back. But if they are in a lease or even not in a lease and you have specific reasons to terminate the tenancy, what are those reasons? Sometimes it could be as simple as not getting your rent, which is non-payment, or maybe you have more specific reasons. There's damage to the unit. If they have a pet, maybe they're not taking care of that pet very well. I like to tell a lot of the landlords we work with, come up with a journal, write things down, get a calendar. When did these things happen? Because if you do have to go through the entire process, you're going to have to prove your case.
Okay.
How are you going to prove that? What evidence do you have? What witnesses will you be presenting if it's more than just non-payment? And making sure you have all of those things organized, because it can get a little hectic, especially a lot of people try to do it on their own. But the more organized you are, the better result you'll get. Any eviction starts with a notice to quit. In Massachusetts, we have 3 types. We have 30-day for cause, 30-day for no cause, and then 14-day non-payment. Different towns have different other regulations that you have to provide, or different notices that you have to provide with the notice to quit. A lot of people go on like LegalZoom or different things and kind of look up their own notices to quit. But again, coming from an attorney, I always recommend hiring an attorney to prepare the notice to quit, only because there can be a lot of changes that happen really, really quickly. COVID presented a whole host of list of responsibilities and notices that landlords do have to provide that a lot of landlords didn't know. Sometimes landlords will use constables to prepare them, and maybe they're not always well versed in what the updated law is. So it's just to err on the side of caution. If you were to ask an attorney, they would tell you to get an attorney. But it always starts with a notice to quit. Once that notice expires, then you would send them a summons and complaint, and that would get the ball rolling going into court. Again, document, write, journal, date, make sure you have all of your things in a row. Recently, what I would say is the court process in this post-COVID world has gotten much better.
Okay.
Again, they do have a lot of resources available for landlords. A lot of these courthouses now have what they call court service centers that you can actually walk in and kind of get some free legal advice on the day of or maybe the day before. Because it can be a little bit daunting. Even if you were to Google, you can't Google everything, right?
True.
And so see if there is a courthouse near where you're living that maybe has one of these lawyer for the day programs or court service centers that have lawyers who are on site that can answer some questions for you. But for the most part, it really just starts with that notice to quit, summons and complaint, filing with the court, and then getting a court date. But it's all about that documentation and that record keeping and making sure that you're organized.
So I hear business again.
Your business.
Business again. So
Absolutely.
because any great business has great documentation.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And I think the other thing is just kind of reassessing how you got to that situation, right?
Okay.
Because if you're planning on evicting someone, something in that marriage didn't work, right? What happened? Was it a lack of communication, maybe on both sides, maybe on one side? Was it just a lack of oversight? Again, the damage to the unit doesn't happen overnight. Sometimes it does, but where can we correct some of these issues so that in the future when you go to re-rent,
the situations change. Maybe somebody got divorced or got sick or
or
so
something.
things happen.
Absolutely, things happen, and how can you be more assertive in that environment, because it is your property at the end of the day, right? And so you want to still make sure you're very well versed in that landlord-tenant relationship and how you can kind of navigate that system. Maybe you're being a resource for the tenant. As you said, sometimes people just fall into these situations that are beyond their control. And so, at that point, you're still keeping your business hat on. How can you be a resource to, transition this person to a different space that they need to be in that more appropriately fits their situation, right? But that still comes with a business hat, right? It doesn't have to all be adversarial.
Right.
You can just kind of be that stepping stone for them, but it is coming down to that organization and making sure you have those resources available.
And then I like what you said about it not having to be adversarial, because just from my own perspective, I look at the court as adversarial.
Right.
Y'all like that too? Y'all think court is I gotta win versus them, and so trying to recondition my mind and renew my mind to think about it as a business, I'm trying to move this person on,
right,
and still be able to do what I need to do.
Absolutely.
So I guess it comes back down to win-win situations, but I talk all the time anyway, for things like that.
Yeah. And I think it's about that win-win situation. It's you might be right on paper, but how does that move your situation, right? You can use all the tools and resources in the world to put the other side down, but that may actually hinder your overall goal, right? Just, don't pay to just be right. Think about how this is going to affect my business. It might be better to just work things out, right? And you can get back to your unit, maybe re-rent it, as opposed to being right and making sure that the person knows what they did is wrong. That may not serve anyone.
True.
But yourself, self-serving, right? But it may not really move the needle in your business,
right.
And so you got to think about that. Cut some losses here and there to gain more wins.
But you can win the battle but lose the war.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and so you're looking to use this asset as a way to build wealth. And
right.
So, keeping that at the forefront of what you've been saying all night. This is a business. Yeah. It's very helpful.
Yeah.
One last question for Vanessa, and then we're gonna let Jetta tell us how we can reach her, and then we're gonna get up out of here.
So you just said something about cutting the losses.
Yes.
So like if you were in an eviction process or something like that, what would you recommend for that process to try to keep it a smooth transition, or to keep it out of court?
Yeah. I think that each court, each county now has what they call a housing court. So just for logistical purposes, you can file an eviction technically in any district court in the town in which you live, right?
Okay.
And so if you live in Hyde Park, the closest courthouse to Hyde Park is West Roxbury. Let's just
Okay.
use that for an example. So technically you could file in West Roxbury, but you can also file in the Boston Housing Court, which also covers West Roxbury, if that makes logistical sense. And so the reason why I make that distinction is each county or area has these housing courts which have court specialists, right? And so these are people who are trained to speak with landlords and tenants about their situation. And so those individuals can meet with you and the tenant to have